Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for joining us to talk about one of the most contentious issues of our times, the repurposing of subsidies. This is contentious not just in our countries and all over, but it's also contentious everywhere. And it's the most important reform we need to move agriculture towards the sustainable development goals. And in terms of numbers, our keynote speaker will give you more. We're looking at something like 650 to 750 billion that is locked up, going in the wrong direction. And if a minute part of it can be channeled towards what we care about, soil, biodiversity, health, rural incomes, diversification of farming incomes, making farmers and producers less of being price takers and more to being price makers, we'll be living in a very different world. So let's kick off the conversation. We shall begin by inviting State Secretary Flasbarth to come and address us, and then we'll move over to the keynote presentation by Sergiy Zorya from the World Bank. State Secretary.
Thank you, Oshani. Dear colleagues and friends, a very exciting topic in the center of how transform our agriculture and food system towards sustainability. We had a very interesting session yesterday evening where we handed over the gaffes to the Global Alliance Against Hunger and Poverty to our Brazilian friends. But of course, with this, it is not done. We have very important targets to fight hunger. We have an enthusiastic G20 presidency. We have a charismatic leader with President Lula on that. And now we need to look into it. How can we do the transformation? The agriculture system I'm working with from a more conflicting side for a long time. When I was president of the National Nature Conservation Society in Germany, I was not the most welcomed person at meetings of farmers because we saw the impact of agriculture as we are doing it in my country, in Europe, but also in many parts of the world, being conflicting with targets of biodiversity. Later on, we understood the impacts on climate change. Of course, for water, it is relevant. So a lot of conflicts around. We have advanced in the conversation between let's say the farmers and the food system, the conservation and the environmentalists, and also the consumer associations, not only in my country, but in many national constitutions, constituencies, and also on the international level. And that is the way forward. Because what we have not seen some, let's say, 25 years ago, that also farmers are highly affected by climate change, but also by the change of market patterns. That is true here, but that is, since I took office at the Ministry for Development Cooperation, it's also extremely relevant in our partner countries. So what is needed is to find solutions that work for farmers, that will be able to provide income for the farmers, and at the same time overcoming malnutrition and hunger. And if I look at the challenges for the transformation of different sectors, they are all huge. If you look in the steel industry, the mobile industries, chemical industries, all is difficult. But the difference to the agriculture sector is that we do have a lot of money in the system. I need to look at the figures. I knew the German figures, but it's about, I remember some $850 billion. Yeah, I remember the number right. You are nodding, you are the experts. So $850 billion annually in the system, most of them not working for sustainability, but against it. So the bad thing is that they are not working for sustainability, but the good thing is that they are there. And that is the repurposing discussion about. It's still not an easy one, because if you repurpose, it can easily happen that you have some in the system that are losing. Of course, they will not like it, and some others are benefiting, and that is the way how we need to adjust it. I don't know whether Peter Strohschneider will be online later on. Unfortunately not, because he did a marvelous job in Germany, bringing all the different stakeholders together, and now he did the same in Europe. A really charismatic moderator, listening to people, what are their position, and bringing them and moving them to a consensus. We are seeing the figures here also in this slide. I'm very happy that Germany is promoting the World Bank's Trust Fund Food System 2050. We are also working on the issue of repurposing the funds. We did it already in Dubai at the climate COP. We will continue, and with this, hopefully, bring a solid foundation to the debates ahead of us. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, State Minister, putting consumers in the picture too. Thank you very much for doing that. Sergiy, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. It's my pleasure to be today here. My voice is a bit affected by Hamburg weather, sorry. So let me see how it works. Yep. We at the World Bank strongly believe that the opportunity for real food system change is growing at a scale never seen before. Last year at the UN Climate Summit in Dubai, COP28, 160 countries signed a landmark declaration to integrate food and agriculture into their national climate plans, prioritizing nature, low emission, and climate resilient productivity growth. Similar commitments have been made on other global forums and meetings of G7, G20, OECD, and others. But how to capitalize on this excellent opportunity? As the starting point, we need to rethink the business as usual. Despite the remarkable progress achieved since 1960 to feed global population, agri-food system is under stress. On the one hand, climate change is making a large dent on productivity growth, and that productivity growth was key to achieve results in the past. On the other, past growth generated huge hidden costs associated with global warming, destruction of our ecosystems, and range of health impacts. The recent estimates of these hidden costs by the Food and Agriculture Organization is more than $12 trillion. The message is clear, the business as usual path is unacceptable. But the frequently asked question on how countries will secure the billions needed to cover the cost of the shift, especially as many of them face rising public debts and economic difficulties. The key to unlocking change is hiding in the plain sight. The State Secretary was talking on the funds already spent, and it's a huge amount of funds. Each year, the country channel more than 850 billion in the agri-food system, or 650 billion when deducting the negative market price support. And this is only for countries that we have data for. There is a huge data gap in many countries, right? So there are a couple of the very large countries not included in this number, like Nigeria, Ethiopia, Egypt, Bangladesh, and they add 5-6 billion more, and you quickly come to $900 billion. They do this through trade measures and public expenditures, largely designed to boost production of specific crop and livestock products. support farm incomes, or keep food prices low for consumers. In many cases, this is simply a bad value for money, even for farmers, in addition to generating large hidden costs mentioned earlier. Surely, there are many differences among countries, but there are also many things in common. Many countries spend at least 0.5% of GDP for supporting agriculture, which is a significant amount, even if in relative terms, even if the absolute values are low. Many policies and programs often end up rewarding farmers for polluting the planet by overusing fertilizers, practicing monoculture, or cutting down trees when the money could be spent on rewarding them for sustainable practices such as crop diversification, healthy soils, and agroforestry. Thus, most support keeps distorting production and consumption decisions, reducing sustainability of agri-food system. Everything which is below the red line falls into that category and needs to be rethinked and repurposed and restructured. The aspiration is to shift as much as support possible, following up the green arrow. Using existing money paid to support agriculture to achieve better outcomes could be a game changer. For instance, our modeling with IFPRI in 2022 show that shifting just 10% of the most distortive subsidies to climate-smart agriculture could generate an additional $2.4 trillion by 2040. At the same time, that could also reduce food prices by 18%, GHG emissions by 40%, and restore more than 2% of the farmland or natural habitats. When thinking about repurposing in the context of the limited resources, we need to aspire to achieve many development objectives at the same time. We can no longer afford to think only about using one instrument to achieve one objective, as we did in the past. Also, the agricultural productivity remains the key, which is the growth emphasized yesterday by Chancellor, by the IMF director, by the World Bank president. Growth remains the key, the productivity is a part of that growth. It needs to be elevated in a way to protect resources, contribute to nutrition security, and reduce poverty at the same time. The report shown on this slide discusses these trade-offs in detail. But to act on repurposing, we need to think globally, but act locally. While collective and coordinated global action will achieve some of the gains, actual policy change needs to happen at the country level, where the rubber hit the road. This change must be rooted within the country-specific opportunities, constraints, and the trade-offs. To assist developing countries in navigating these challenges, the World Bank, with the support of our partners, such as the BMZ, Danish government, and 9 other donors contributing to the Food System 2030 Multi-Donor Trust Fund, has introduced a comprehensive support package to move from advocacy to action. This package includes the country-specific agricultural public expenditure reviews, regular policy dialogues between Global North and Global South, enhanced data insights, and funding for targeted repurposing programs. While the results often take time to materialize, the initial progress has been encouraging. I'll give you 2 examples today, Philippines and Uzbekistan. In the Philippines, the World Bank supported trade reforms, helped eliminate import restrictions for private sector, and introduced a transparent tariff regime which reduced the price gap between domestic and international rice prices. Tariff revenues were channeled into rice competitiveness enhancement programs. As a result, rice prices have dropped without reducing the level of domestic rice production, directly benefiting the country's poorest citizens, many of whom are rice producers, farmers themselves. Encouraged by this initial achievement, ensuring that the farmers can actually benefit and respond to incentive not only through elevated prices, but through the package of measures to increase competitiveness and sustainability, the Philippines government last month decided to reduce the import tariff by half, to cut it from 35% to 17% for the next 10 years, further providing impetus for more sustainable agri-food system development in the country. Another example is Uzbekistan, where following the elimination of costly price taxation of cotton and wheat, estimated at 1.6% of GDP, the country has revised its public expenditure regime to promote diversification, soil health, and market development. Together with the abolishment of systematic forced labor in cotton production, the agricultural price liberalization that took place between 2020 and 2023 enables more sustainable agri-food system development. I saw yesterday the Minister of Finance and Deputy Prime Minister of Uzbekistan in the conference here. He was the champion, he was the pioneer of these reforms, who show that with the right willingness, such reforms, which were thought to be impossible in a couple of years ago, were able to realize. Now, we are also now expanding our work, collaborating with 7 pilot countries in Sub-Saharan Africa, East Asia, South Asia, to support the design of agricultural reforms and strengthen the organizational capabilities needed to implement these reforms through so-called repurposing projects. The support from BMZ has been critical to finance the first wave of this project, especially in Sub-Saharan Africa. I'm very happy to see here with us today the representative of Agricultural Ministry of Malawi. He will later speak at the panel today. Malawi is taking a critical look at the design of country fertilizer support program to increase its value for money. The proposed project in Malawi will introduce e-vouchers that offer farmers a range of technology choices and crowd in private sector, digital farm registry for better targeting, and complementary services like soil testing and extension for precision agriculture. We will also pilot payment for ecosystem services schemes in Malawi, probably the first in the region. The repurposing project in Malawi and in other countries are still in preparationary phase, but we are coming very close to complete preparation and begin implementation. The lessons learned along the way will be crucial as countries rethink and realign the public policies and programs. So to conclude, I would like to make 2 announceables. The report, the first will launch the report on the repurposing, which is available in the GFNS dashboard. The report tells story about the World Bank shift from advocacy to action. It also shows the great value of partnerships, such as under FS 2030, and what initial grant funding can do to encourage a wider systematic change. Today, we also launched the agricultural support tab at the Global Food and Nutrition Security dashboard to improve the access to data, analytical work, to support the repurposing agenda, so that policymakers and many stakeholders across the world can gain the necessary data and tools to make more informed decisions. We share with all of you the vision of the world where public support drives resilient, sustainable food systems and farmers for generations to come. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sergiy. Takeaway: most countries spend 0.5% of GDP on agriculture. That's a big amount in dollar value, in nominal value, and in political capital. So let's make this happen. I invite our illustrious panel to please join me on stage. Esther, State Secretary, please join me on stage. Henry. Donal, please join us on stage. Thank you very much. We're going to get stuck right into the discussion now. And if I may, I will begin with you, State Secretary Gandløse Hansen. And we go to one of the bravest moves government has done in recent history, which is a carbon tax on agriculture. So when we look at the value of the tax, we're looking at something like 300 Danish kroner, 43 euros per ton of carbon. You're going to increase that to almost double the value, towards 80 euros per ton by 2035. Yes, by 2035. But there is this 60% deduction possible when you're moving to climate-smart practices. State Secretary, could you take 2 minutes to tell us the single most important factor that drove this decision? And secondly, how are you using the revenues from this tax into reinvestment in climate-smart ag and farmer welfare?
Thank you very much. And I'm not sure if it's the bravest decision taken with the announcement of what we call green tripart in Denmark. And if you allow, moderator, just 30 seconds on how this at all could happen. Because the way that these negotiations were handled was in a combination with the farmers, originated by the Danish government, obviously, the municipalities, the Danish regions, but then inviting to the table both the Danish farmers, so the Food and Agriculture Council, and the Nature Conservation Organization. So bringing both farmers and nature to the table for long political negotiations. I think I can share that in this room with the government, and I think I can also share that there are currently being negotiations with the remaining parties in Denmark around this. So coming back to your decision, how could that happen? We need to identify solutions and incentives in order to stimulate and advance this transformation. And we are by origin a country of farmers, and agriculture is a big impact both of our land capacity, but also as part of our sector and economy. But I think the notion of bringing all the actors to the table to identify solutions is part of the answer of how it was possible to make brave suggestions and solutions. Secondly, how the tax functions and how we hope that it will be successful. I think to that there's a relatively simple answer. By challenging some of these funds back to the farmers in order to invest in new solutions, CO2 reduction solutions. I think that's part of the answer on how we will hopefully succeed with this. But I think it's also important to stress that this is the ambition, the agreement. All parties and sides are behind it, but now we also need to implement. But then taking into context of today's themes, this is obviously also about going forward, leading by example, identifying new solutions that can help us with this transition that we can then take internationally to other countries afterwards.
Thank you, State Secretary. Donal, would you talk us through how IFAD is viewing public support, especially given that the agriculture sector is amongst the most risky ever when we look at blended financing and any other types of financing, hence the importance of public support?
Thank you. So IFAD, for those of you that don't know it, focus on small farmers. And I think I'd just like to build on what the State Secretary just said. Actually, it's not that different in Denmark than it is in the countries we work in. The key thing for us is your point about bringing all the voices in. So for us, and it's lovely to see representatives of the farmers' associations here, IFAD tries to bring in voices to the design of our projects, our programs, and our overall country strategies, which we do in conjunction with government. So we work with government, but we try and ensure that there is a diversity of voices at that table. We host the International Farmers Forum, the Indigenous Peoples Forum, and we include them as we design new country strategies and projects. But it's not just the project design, it's the implementation. And getting those voices at the table is really, really important on that side of things. And then secondly, we use a number of grant systems and supplementary funding, including from our hosts here today, Germany, to be able to test and innovate within programs. So we may have a big $60, $80 million program with government, but we can inject in some innovation and test. And what we've found is often there's quite a high level of skepticism at the beginning. Governments are looking to invest in very hard, proven technologies, but actually if you can put in a small innovation there and you can show it works, the next phase they're very happy to scale up and take it on board. So that's what we do, and then we supplement that by looking at policy studies and analytical work we can help government with, both through the projects and separately. And we have a big program of South-South triangular cooperation. So for us, it's taking the Philippines example and actually exposing other countries to it. Nothing is a better demonstration than talking to each other rather than us trying to convince governments to take these experiences on the board. And then just lastly, it's working through with international partners like the World Bank, like the other Rome-based agencies, to add our voice onto some of the international policy fora that are trying to move some of these agendas forward on a global level.
Thank you, Donal. Also confirming the reality as opposed to the rhetoric. Having people talk and exchange is perhaps the biggest opportunity for reform. Esther. Delighted to have you with us.
Thank you for having me.
Could you tell us the two most important policy reforms that farmers in the breadbasket of the world that you represent are waiting for to begin and accelerate this transition?
Yes, good morning to everyone, and really thank you to the organizers for inviting us to share the perspective of farmers' organization. So basically what we think are, can I give three? Three important policies. First is secured rights, tenural rights to our lands, our waters, our forests, and our seeds. These are our natural base of production. Without land, where do we plant? Without waters and seas, where do we catch fish? Without seeds, access to seeds and our rights to seeds, how can we propagate and how can we put diversity in our crops and plants? Without secured rights, we could not have this motivation to invest long-term and to think more sustainably in our incomes and our livelihoods. So that's the first policy. And in many countries in Asia, this policy, when implemented by government, really spells change. In Vietnam, in China, the incomes of the farmers and the motivation to really plant really rose because they had secure rights to lands. The second policy is policies which are promoting regenerative agroecological approaches. You said, World Bank said, the minister said already, many incentives that can promote agroecology. We have experienced and we have seen in our farms that agroecology can have multiple wins. It can promote biodiversity, increase soil health, increase our incomes, increase our climate resilience. So basically, policies that, for example, incentivize production through organic, integrated, diversified means, policies to, even for the government to have public procurement. So buying from farmers' produce, buying organic products from farmers' produce. We know that governments is a big market. Governments conduct so many seminars and conferences rather than, for example, making or giving soft drinks. Why not fruit juices that are produced by farmers' organizations and cooperatives? Not taxes that also prohibit or demotivate organic, inorganic, or chemically produced foods will be also one. Okay, so many things for payment for ecological services. And maybe the third one is basically make farmers at the center, at the heart of all policies that talk about agri-food system transformation. food is produced by family farmers, 80% of the global world's food. And small-scale producers are 80% of the family farmers in the world. And we are the most vulnerable. Put us at the center, put us at the heart, and involve us as equal partners, not just as the vulnerable groups, not just as beneficiaries of your projects and programs, but equal partner, because we have solutions basically through agroecological approaches. Involve us, engage us as equal partners. We will have the responsibility, the ownership, and the accountability to be with you. Thank you.
Thank you, Esther. That says all, Esther. Thank you very much. Henry, soil has been coming up as a very important issue in Malawi. And you have been working on fertilizer and fertilizer support programs and fertilizer subsidies. Give us 2 big headline messages from this work. Please.
Okay, thank you very much. It's true we are implementing the Farm Input Subsidy Program, which we call AIP in Malawi. And we have implemented this for the past 20 years. So what we do is we provide farmers with inputs like fertilizer,
Yes.
inorganic fertilizer, but also improved seed. Over time, we have noted that despite making this support to farmers, the yields have continuously been going down because of climate change issues and what have you. So, this issue of yield is going down because of high pH levels, which the fertilizers have brought. But also we have noted that our soils, carbon, have been highly compromised.
Yes.
Yeah, so following the Nairobi conference, which was done, as Malawi, we came up with now an action plan
Yes.
to address these issues of low yield. Make sure how do we address fertilizer issues, but also how do we address soil health issues. Fortunately enough, we got financing support from the World Bank. I'm very thankful, and also thankful to the government of Germany for the support through the FS 2030. And we have a project, Food Systems and Resilience Project in Malawi, which now would like to support the repurposing of the AIP, which is the subsidy program. What we want is to use the e-voucher, as Sergiy said.
Yes.
Yeah. With about 36,000 farmers in 26 out of the 28 districts. Having done that, we would want to pilot the packaging of the Farm Input Subsidy Program. Apart from giving farmers fertilizer, but also apart from giving them improved seed, we are now proposing to have a situation where we are coming in with other climate, smart agriculture activities. And these climate smart agriculture activities are going to be incentivized so that more farmers adopt, and at the end of the day, we solve the problem of soil health. As we are doing that, I think as Malawi, what we want to do again is to engage many stakeholders. The first stakeholder is the university, Lilongwe University of Agriculture and Natural Resources, which is doing now a kind of baseline study. Go to all the 36,000 farmers I was talking about, take soil samples, measure the levels of soil pH, carbon, and the other soil parameters, NPK, cation exchange capacity, and what have you. This is the baseline. Then in the next 2 years, because we are piloting this thing, we would want to come back to the same set of farmers, measure the same soil parameters, see what is the level of pH, what carbon, NPK, cation exchange capacity, but also the yield at the end of the day. Are we having an increase or not? Basically, what we want is for government to make a decision to implement an AIP that is going to be responsive to issues of climate change, but also bring in that element of sustainability at the end of the day. Thank you.
Amazing, amazing, Henry. We have 5 minutes. Again, Henry, that says all. We have less than 5 minutes to close, and Shobha will end this discussion. Before Shobha comes in, I would like to invite the panel to give us one headline message on the repurposing of subsidies. I invite the panel to also watch the clock along with me. One headline message. We start with State Secretary Hansen.
I think my message will be that we need to combine all good efforts to the table. Previous opponents need to come together to find solutions. And we also need to combine our efforts in the climate agenda with our push for agri-food systems to be integrated in these climate debates. And then we need to come together in NGOs, governments, and other institutions. And the World Bank has also announced how we in Denmark are trying to support that also by donating to some of those funds. So I think to bridge the gap, we need to bridge the discussions and have all parties on board.
Thank you, State Secretary. Donal, please.
Thank you. So maybe just building on that, I think nothing is, we can talk all we like and we can produce as many reports as we like, but nothing is better than actually showing that it works on the ground. And therefore, being able to pilot and demonstrate allows you to be able to scale up. And I think too much in the past we focused on the piloting and demonstrating without the requisite digital tools that are necessary so that you can actually pay practically small farmers for environmental services. So what we've tried to do is, for example, with the 15 million euros that Germany gave us for our adaptation fund, is actually pilot in Brazil, Ethiopia and Lesotho, but pilot the digital tools so we can monitor and then make sure that the financial payments can happen easily, because that's generally where it falls down, and then you can scale up. Thank you.
I beg the organizers for 2 extra minutes, please, because we must hear from Esther and we must hear from Henry. Esther.
Yes, basically, we would ask for more and better finance, that with farmers' organizations as equal partners at the decision-making table, as service implementer, as monitoring and evaluation partners as well. World Bank, we are in the steering committee of the Global Agriculture Food Security Program. Thank you. Because of that, we have PO-led projects. IFAD, we are your partner, farmers' organizations, and thank you also for this, but we want more and better finance. Thank you.
Thank you, Esther. Henry, one headline message.
One headline message. I think repurposing is an inclusive agenda. It's an inclusive agenda. We need to take advantage of the comparative advantages that many players bring in to add value to the repurposing agenda. More importantly, financing. Thank you.
Repurposing and financing, we're bringing the 2 streams of revenues together. Thank you all for your presence today. Thank you to the organizers and to BMZ for giving us this important space to have this discussion. I hand over to Shobha Shetty to close. Thank you all very much.
Thank you very much, Oshani. I've been told I prepared sort of a 10-minute speech, but now I'm going to have to reduce it to 2 minutes. But yes. No, but thank you so much. We've had a wonderful discussion, which was stimulated by Sergiy's presentation. It was really interesting to hear from a wide spectrum of stakeholders in this really, really important space. So what were my key takeaways? But let me first start off by saying that, as as Oshani mentioned, this is one of the most contentious agendas, not just in Malawi or the Philippines, but in Germany, in Denmark, Europe as well, all over the world. So clearly, this is an agenda where we all need to come together, be inclusive, as was said before, to really make a dent in how agriculture is done, because business as usual is no longer an option. We do need the productivity growth. We have many parts of Africa where productivity still is stagnant or declining. So growth does need to happen, but in a way that protects our planet. And as you can see in this board here, it doesn't take a whole lot. Even repurposing just 10% of the most distortive subsidies to green innovations could generate an additional $2.4 trillion by 2040. And this shift could also reduce food prices by 18%, sector emissions by 40%, and restore more than 2% of all farmlands to natural habitats. So let us be very clear. We are not talking about taking billions away from agriculture. I think we need to have our narrative here. It's refocusing a very small part. I mean, let's remember that. Refocusing a very small part can have such enormous payoffs. So this is what I think we're all striving towards. And we really welcome our partnership through the Food Systems 2030 Trust Fund, where we have support of partners such as BMZ, FCDO, and others to really produce sort of a comprehensive support package to move from advocacy to action. And as Secretary of State Flasbarth said, politically, this is a really difficult issue and really associated with very strong headwinds in many countries. But I think what is important for us to note is, for the first time in COP28, we actually had 160 heads of state sign off on a declaration that integrated food and agriculture into climate action. This is historic and unprecedented and gives us a tremendous opportunity now to really go from talk to action. I do also want to say that the global policy dialogues that we are also supporting is a great avenue for knowledge sharing and awareness raising. And as someone mentioned earlier, you learn from your peers better than you learn from World Bank reports or anything else, right? So we've hosted 17 such dialogues since 2021, and this has given ministers of agriculture a safe space to discuss how these reforms are actually implemented in practice. I think, I've attended a couple of them, and these are really sort of the venues for awareness raising and knowledge sharing to make all of this happen in our client countries. I don't know how much more time we have. Oh, over there. Okay, I have 1 minute. Okay, so I just have so many things that I wanted to talk about, but let's also remember that, when we're talking about climate change and how agriculture is both a victim of and a contributor to climate change, we need to remember that less than 5% of all climate finance goes to agriculture. And as our representative from the Philippines has said, farmers want to invest in regenerative agriculture, but a lot of the time, I heard the word incentives at least a couple of times, and farmers need incentives to adopt technologies. There's a lot of research and innovation out there, but which are not making its way to farmers' fields. And we need to move from pilot phases to really scaling up to have impact at scale. And all of this needs incentives, it needs blended finance, it needs private sector to come in along with governments and international financial institutions. And just one last word on partnerships and consultation. As State Secretary of Denmark said, you need to bring everyone to the table. I mean, farmers, it's not doing things to the sector, it's doing things with the sector. And farmers, we heard about equal-footed partnerships yesterday. So farmers need to be at the center of these discussions. And Denmark I know Denmark is a small country, but Denmark is a pioneer in this regard and has really led the way for others to follow. I mean, in my own country, India, for example, there were really far-reaching reforms in agricultural marketing that were introduced, but failed spectacularly because farmers were not consulted. And the government had to back off and withdraw the reforms eventually. But the reforms were good in principle, but did not involve the consultation that was needed to really make it happen as Denmark did. So let me just conclude by saying that we also now launch the agricultural support tab in our global food and nutrition security dashboard. Again, thanks very much to our partners, to BMZ for their support with this, to really improve the access to data and analytic work that support the repurposing agenda. And we really hope that you find it useful, and thank you very much for your attention.